Assalamu alaikum and welcome to this episode in our nightly series, Divine Messages, a journey through the Qur'an during this blessed month of Ramadan. Let's explore tonight's divine message.
هو القرآن والفرقان إليه تنصت الأكوان وفيه تعطر الآذان والقرآن.
Early in the revelation of the Qur'an, the Prophet ﷺ was receiving small portions of the Qur'an that were keeping him comfortable. Of course, the Prophet ﷺ did not have many supporters at that time. But suddenly there was a gap, about 10 to 12 days, where the Prophet ﷺ was not receiving any revelation. And this was an opportunity for the idolaters, the mushrikeen and Quraysh, to start mocking the Prophet ﷺ. They started saying things like Allah had forgotten about him and that he had given up on him and that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala no longer wanted to send him revelation. They were basically mocking the Prophet ﷺ. And the Prophet ﷺ felt very isolated. He started to wonder if something had happened. Had he done something wrong? Was there something amiss in his prophethood? Was he no longer going to receive revelation? And finally, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent down verses to comfort the Prophet ﷺ, to remind him that he was always in the presence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and to never forget that he's always with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and Allah is always with him. It's truly challenging for us when we go through the hustle and bustle of life to constantly keep our minds focused on the fact that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is always there and that we are always in His presence.
ذكر وموعظة ونور فيه شفاء للصدور.
So what does that experience entail? Recognizing and sensing the presence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in our lives. It entails comfort, support, protection, and the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And it's an experience that Allah tells us is especially reserved for the righteous. He says, "Surely Allah is with those who are mindful of Him and do good deeds." There's a very nice story of a teacher centuries ago who had a group of students. And those students noticed that their teacher gave preferential treatment to one of the students. And they were envious. So they went up to their teacher and they said, "Why do you treat him differently? Why do you give him special treatment?" And he didn't answer them. He just smiled. A few days later, the teacher asked his students to come the next day with a live chicken. He said, "I want each of you to bring a live chicken to class." So they all came, including that student, with a live chicken. And then he told them, "Your task for the day is to go and slaughter the chicken somewhere where no one will see you, and then come back." So they all scurried away. And shortly thereafter, each of the students was coming back with a slaughtered chicken in hand. And then they noticed that they'd all gathered except this one student had not come back yet. And then they started to make fun of him, thinking that he was too weak or too scared to slaughter the chicken. But shortly he did show up, but the chicken was still alive. He hadn't slaughtered the chicken. So they started making even more fun of him, saying that, "Look at him. He wasn't able to take care of a simple task. We all slaughtered our chickens, and look at him, he's coming back and the chicken is still alive in his hand." And the teacher became very upset at him. He looked at him and said, "Didn't I ask you to slaughter the chicken? Why is the chicken still alive?" The student looked at his teacher and he said, "Yes, teacher, but every time I went somewhere and hid and was about to slaughter the chicken, I remembered that you said, 'Slaughter the chicken somewhere where no one will see you.' But everywhere I hid, I remembered that I was in the presence of Allah and I was unable to slaughter the chicken." And at that moment, the rest of the students realized that indeed he was a unique student and deserved the extra attention that his teacher gave him.
ذكر وموعظة ونور فيه شفاء للصدور.
Those living in the presence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala receive unique benefits. Their hearts are in sync with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah is their protector, and they get relief from their miseries and their challenges directly from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And let us not forget the words of wisdom uttered by Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, may Allah be pleased with him, in those difficult moments when the news spread that the Prophet ﷺ had passed away and people were in disbelief, when he stood to comfort people and to remind them that death was inevitable. And he said, "Whoever worshipped Muhammad ﷺ, let him know that Muhammad had died. And whoever worships Allah, let him know that Allah is always alive and never dies. So our divine message today is enticing us and reminding us that we are always in the presence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He's omnipresent. He never goes away. We go to sleep, He's awake. We wake up, He's still there. And we should always remember that even though today may be the last day of Ramadan, the Lord of Ramadan is the Lord of the rest of the year. So the worship that we engaged in during this great month, during this blessed month, should entice us to increase our worship and our relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala throughout the rest of the year.
ذكر وموعظة ونور فيه شفاء للصدور.
Today's divine message, ما ودعك ربك وما قلى. Your Lord has not abandoned you, nor has He detested you.